Hello everyone and welcome to Board Games with Nurgleprobe. This is a short little podcast that I record as an extension of some of my Instagram sketches that I do on board games. And the reason for this is because I call those sketches reviews or board game reviews. And they're not really board game reviews. They're more like sketches about the game or some element from the game that I think is hilarious or weird or fun or something that most players should probably recognize. This episode we're going to talk about my very first one that I did, my first sketch, and that was about the game called Resistance. So let's get this party started and talk about my favorite party game of all time. So, The Resistance, a party game designed by Don Eskridge, published in 2009 for 5 to 10 players. I also believe that the newer version, which was called Avalon, which took a fantasy theme instead of the sci-fi theme that the Resistance originally had, was released in 2012. Though those new characters that were released then has been later added as expansion to the original game, and everyone knows that a sci-fi theme is much cooler than a fantasy theme. Anyway, that's your preference. The game takes place in a futuristic kind of world, even though it doesn't really matter at all for the gameplay, but it's fun to pretend that you're there, I guess. It's a party game for 5 to 10 players, where all the players are put into 2 teams, the blue team, which is the Resistance, and the red team, which are the spies. So in the beginning of the game, all players will close their eyes, and the red players will look at each other. These 2 players will then try to ruin the day for everyone else in the room. During the gameplay, you will do 5 missions, and on these missions you send players. All the blue players want the mission to succeed, and the red players want the mission to fail. And throughout these games, so it's basically best of 5. So if there are 3 successes, the blue team wins. If there are 3 fails, the red team wins. And the way you play this out is basically you will send 2 to 3 players on each mission. And these players will then vote if the mission is a success or a fail. The blue players can only vote success, while the red players can decide if they want to do a success card or a fail card. And of course these votes are hidden. So no player will ever know if you're a red player voting a fail on a mission or if you're a blue player doing a success. And that is kind of the tricky part about this game. As you try and build groups for missions, as a blue player, you always want the blue players on the mission to make it a success, while the red players will try and infiltrate those missions to play fail cards on those missions. But there's also a second element to this game, and that is you can actually vote if you think the team should go on the mission. So the team captain will decide on 3 players, then all players will decide on, will these 3 players go on that mission? And the reason this is such a huge element of this game is, imagine a 5-player game. In a 5-player game, you send 2 people on the first mission, and you send these 2. No one will vote against it because nobody really knows anything about anyone at this point. And one of the cards that get played that turn is a fail card. Everyone now knows that one of those 2 players is a red player. And this makes it so intense because both of these players will pretend to be blue. They will talk for their cause and they want to be on each mission from now on just to make the blue or, the blue players win. Everyone's going to fight for the blue side even though they're on the red side because you want to get in on the missions even if you're, pretending to be blue, but obviously you want to play fail cards to win. And the problem is, in the following turns, there will be a mission that requires 3 people. So the blue players needs to pick one of those 2, because one of those 2 is probably a blue player, unless 2 red players was on the first mission and somehow managed to play one red. It's so, oh my god, it's so intense how this plays out, and there will be so much talk and so much kind of staring at each other, looking at each other's eyes and being like, are you lying? Are you lying to me right now? And some players are bad at that. Some players are, I think you really need to play this with your group of players to see if everyone kind of works with it. Because sometimes I know that my group has one player that is really bad at lying, but it still works. And the game is hilarious because it is about the social interaction between all the players. So even if you have some players that are not great at it, it will still be a lot of fun. It will still be a lot of fun to figure out who's who and so on and so on. And the big reveal in the end is always hilarious. There has also been a few expansions released for this game, which means that you get more characters into it, because instead of just being spies and the resistance, you also have roles like the commander and assassin and so on and so on. And the commander knows who the spies are, but the spies don't know who the commander is. So that's basically a blue player that knows about the reds. And then one of the red players will be the assassin. So in the end of the game, if the blue players actually win, the assassin has one last mission to do, and that is to pick out the commander. If he manages to pick the commander in the end, the red players still win. And there are several different kind of expansions. There are 2 expansions for the game, but in both of these, there are different kinds of characters and things that you can add to the game to make it more difficult, not difficult, but more fun. There is a lot more, not role-playing, because you're not going to role-play the commander, because then everyone will know that you're going to die to the assassin in the end if you win. But it's still, it gives everything more to look at. You have more to think about, you have more information to think about, and it's just a lot of fun. And I think that basically covers what the Resistance is, and it's a great game, it's a great party game, and it's really, really cheap for the amount of fun that it brings to the table. So that is The Resistance, a party game for 5 to 10 players. A hilarious game that I think everyone should try if they get the chance. And yeah, that's basically it. I am Nurgleprobe, and this has been a very, very short pod about the game The Resistance, which is also a follow-up on my Instagram sketch about the very same game. You can find me on Instagram, on YouTube, on Facebook under the name Nurgleprobe. And if you do find me, and if you feel like you have something to talk about or tell me about this pod, or how it was done, or suggestions, or anything else, or a game that you think that I should talk about, please leave a comment somewhere where I can find it. And until next time, everyone, take care, and see you soon.